Hi, folks. Welcome to It Matters Radio. Boy, Monica, you and I, it's not often we get to talk in depth,
No.
and I enjoy doing that with you. We talk about serious things, you know. We talk about fun things too, but we talk about some very serious things. And I guess because you, as authors, you know, it's funny. We tell stories. We make up stories,
Mm-hmm.
right? And you know, a lot of the stories I make up are fantastical. You know, they're oh, I don't know. Sometimes it's a horror story, whatever. But underneath, always underneath, for me, there dwells this.
Yeah, there's always something
Yeah,
there.
there's something
Yes.
there. There's something about life, about finding meaning in life. And I think we authors tend to be very serious people that way. You know, even
Yeah.
even the ones who write farce and you know the light stuff.
Yeah, thank
We
goodness for
think
them
about
also.
life. We think about life. We think about life. We think about death. We think about faith. We think about God, the absence or presence of God, and how many gods or goddesses or what have you. We think about those things. And I was thinking today, you and I, we never really have shared on It Matters Radio what we believe personally.
Yes. Yeah.
Um,
We haven't, have we?
yeah. So I thought I'd
Um,
start out by asking you,
well, maybe
what do you
today's the
believe?
day.
Hmm? Um,
What do I think about God?
yeah, what do you believe? What is your...
Oh, okay. I believe that everything comes from the same source, and it's all part of each other. Whether it be the trees and the animals and insects, I think we all are some form of energy or part of God. Who something ultimately created this or it created together. So we're all part of it.
Mhm.
And I also believe because we're all part of it, we're all part of each other. And when we hurt another person, we hurt each other. When we love another person, we love each other. And I think it's ridiculous that everybody's going around fighting about who's the real God. Because everyone who follows a specific religion believes they're right. They all believe they're righteous. They're the righteous ones. And they put each other down for believing something that should be a shared experience for all of us. That's what I believe.
I know there's something else in your beliefs because it's in your books, which is that you are a strong believer in karma.
Yes, I do. I just look at my own life. I'm not perfect, as nobody is perfect. Even if, they tell the whole world they are, they're not. Um, and every time I've done something, and when you do something that's not right or against what you really are feeling you should do, that comes back later in your life. That same little thing happens to you. And I also think that you learn from each person you meet, each experience you have, and you have a choice. You always have a choice to try to be positive and do the right thing, fight for what you believe is, out of love for other people, or you can choose the other way and be selfish and greedy and, but that's just not the choice that I want to make. I'd rather be the first one if I could. And I do believe that people come back, Ken. Yes,
Come
that
back.
energy or essence or whatever. But I believe there'll never be another you. There'll never be another Kenneth Weene just like you,
Mhm.
or a Monica Brinkman just like me,
Mhm.
or a Michael Godagnu like my brother.
Mhm.
They'll be back as something else. And I bet you meet them, you won't know it. But Because my whole thing, Ken, is I believe that the whole purpose of living things in Earth and who knows what else is out in the universe is to grow. Because I think without movement or energy and growth, it would all disappear. And we're all part of that. So that's why I believe in karma. Because, you know, you were supposed to learn this time around. You didn't do a good job, so.
Now, yeah, one of the things you brought up reminded me of a mutual friend of ours, Steve Lindau, who, of course, is an author. And he
Yes.
believes something very different about karma, which is that people are tied together so that you and we may not recognize we are the same, but that you and I in a previous life perhaps have been tied in some other endeavor.
I absolutely believe that.
And usually these are in like threesomes or foursomes so that the roles get changed around. So, you know,
Well, I think
continuation.
each person we meet in life, there's a reason for it. When it's happening, you're probably thinking, "Oh no," you know, or wonderful, whatever the experience is. But just look back on your life and see.
So what your basic belief though seems to be that how you connect to other people and how you treat other people is in effect how you are treating with whatever it is that we call God or divine.
Right.
That, you know, it's kind of like the thing about treat the stranger well because it may be an angel in disguise, kind of thing. Yeah.
And I don't think we're here for utopia. I also believe that there's good and bad intended to be within the world.
Mhm.
Because if it was all where we came from, that beauty and magnificence, you might as well not have life. You're not going to have movement and learn anything. So you have to have the opposite,
Mm-hmm.
you know.
So evil.
But I wish nowadays it would go a little bit the other way, you know, for everybody.
Yeah. Well, I remember
Not the negative, the positive.
one of Epictetus's sayings. I think it was Epictetus was as the mark is not set up for the purpose of missing the aim, so the nature of evil does not exist in the world. But in a sense, it is why evil exists in the world. That if we always just hit the mark, we would not grow, we would not learn, we would not become
Right.
more proficient.
Right.
What is interesting is, though, you know, certain questions that other people hold or positions other people hold, such as that there are some people who believe, for example, that they are elect and others are not. That they, by their nature, will go to be reunited with some God, and the rest of us, since I don't believe I'm elected.
Most religions, not all of them, but many religions believe that way.
Yeah, that there are selected people.
Which is why we have so much war and everything else. But and it's craziness because none of them know. They can say they know. They can believe they know, but no one knows. Mm-hmm. It's the great mystery of life, and it's meant to be there, because what if it was so magnificent? Everybody be killing themselves, you know?
And then there's another approach, which is forget about God and think only about perfecting oneself. And then we get into those faiths, and one form of which, of course, is Buddhism, which is kind of by not being narcissistic, not being preoccupied by oneself, that one achieves true wisdom. So it's
I like a lot of Buddhist teachings. I mean, I've studied different religions before I even decided what I actually believed in. And there's some very good things in each of the religions. It's when man decides that I have to be the most powerful religion and rule the world with it, or lack of religion, if if they're communist or whatever. But that's when it becomes a problem. And Ken, I believe in Jesus. I pray to God many times, but it's not a God that would be having the people act like they're doing so much in today's world.
Well, I think that there are two ways that one can believe in Jesus. You say. One is to believe through humility in Jesus, that because I am a human being, I am a failed being, that I need the intercession of love and grace. And then there are those who believe that they are elected by Jesus, that they are somehow inherently connected to Jesus. And I think, we're talking within the Christian tradition, but I imagine you could say that there are people in other Buddhists or Islam or whatever, where people believe that they are somehow the best example is of course the Hindu faith, where you have this caste system.
Yes.
And, because I was born to this family, that proves that I'm a higher.
Yeah, I don't like that caste system at all. I think it's a way to keep people in place.
Yeah, but I think that so. But then that brings up something about messiahs. It's very interesting because as you know, and probably by now everybody who listens to our show knows. Well, if there's a new listener out there today, hi, welcome. But I'll tell you now, I'm of course from this very bizarre background religiously. I was born and initially raised Jewish. Then I went to a very Protestant boarding school, where I came into contact with a lot of Christian. Although I should mention I was raised Jewish, but in a city that was predominantly Catholic. Then I went to a Protestant boarding school. So I wrestled with religion all my life.
Yeah, I think, yeah.
And even I have been ordained. I gave up my ordination, when because I didn't want to bother to pay the yearly fees. I guess I could rejoin by a small Protestant denomination. And, I wrestled with theology. And the thing that you mentioned Jesus, and the thing I have wrestled with all my life is, what is a Messiah and what does it mean to find a Messiah? Now, a Messiah, the word Messiah, Christians mostly brought up to believe that's a reference to Jesus.
Mm-hmm.
But even if you were to look, the first Messiah mentioned in the Jewish faith is actually not even a Jew.
No.
He was a king. I think he was the king of Babylon. And what it means is one who brings people to God, brings somebody to God. And this Messiah, the first one, was, because he allowed the Jews to return to Jerusalem, to return to Israel from their exile.
Yes.
He was considered a Messiah. So when somebody says to me, well, Jesus is the Messiah, I say, okay, but by my definition of the word Messiah, then I can believe also that for many people all over the world, Muhammad was a Messiah.
Yes. See, that's the same issue I've had, Ken. Even if you listen to Jesus' words, he said that man called him this. He did not call himself this.
Well, yeah.
But he was telling you that we are all the sons and daughters of God.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Well,
he's trying to tell everybody that all this stuff doesn't mean as much.
There's one indicator we know.
There's people who've been doing this forever.
If there's one indicator we know of a false Messiah, is that they think they're the Messiah.
Yes.
Okay, and no, Jesus never claimed that he was a Messiah. But
No, he never
then,
did. People did.
yeah, but
But I
then,
think he had the wisdom. I do think there's certain people, and they're few and far between,
Mhm.
that can enter into, the world, and they have a knowledge that others do not have. And
Mhm.
their goal in life ultimately is to share that.
Yeah, I think
And
another
most
great
society
Messiah.
end up dead.
I think another great Messiah who is sadly much less known is the Sufi poet Rumi, who certainly helped to bring people to a knowledge and acceptance of some kind of God. Now, what God is another whole question. Obama was so fond of saying in certain questions, "That's above my pay grade." I'm able to discuss a Messiah. I don't know if I could discuss a God.
That's what people see him to be, or her to be. And then a lot of people say it's blasphemy that I said her, but you don't know.
Well, I try not to use a he or her, actually, in talking.
Yeah, I think it's both the mother and father God is what I see, the feminine and the masculine.
Well, of course, nowadays we use the pronoun they for the androgynous or transgender, but I don't think I want to use that either. Of course, not just because of the issue of more than one God, or there's only one God or more than one, but because I think the whole idea of pronouncing God is to make God more of identifiable with being like us, whereas God is by definition not like us. So I want to say, I always try and not use a pronoun. I always just use God, God, God.
Right. And Ken, it's if people would just try to come from a point of how they would like to be treated in life when dealing with others, it would change so much.
But then how does God treat us? I want God to treat me like I would treat God, or like I would treat other people.
I don't think people are put in this world with anything but the brain and abilities that we were born with.
Mm.
And if you really want to know what I think that we have a soul with this energy, or an intelligence, and it decides before it enters into a body what its goals are in that life.
Mm-hmm. Well, I think that's true. I think that
it's that others can learn.
The individual comes into the world and comes into their being and evolves and finds direction and like a flower ultimately unfurls to show what it is. And hopefully that process of growing and budding and transforming, it will go in a healthy way and not be stunted. But what is God? But what does God owe the flower? I want to go the other way now. I want to talk about God's responsibility to us.
I don't think.
Stopped it there, didn't I?
To provide us life. That's what I see.
Oh, come now.
It is. Can I get tired of people saying, "Oh, God did this for me," or "God did that for me"? I think that we have. God's too busy. He can't be seeing the whole world at the same time.
Well, that is part of the Judeo-Christian Muslim view of God, is that God is omniscient, omnipresent, and all powerful, and therefore But no, I'm talking about, I guess. No, I wasn't talking about day-to-day life. See, this is where coming from a Jewish tradition changes the view for me changes the view. It enters into a different dialogue because,
Yeah.
for example, I have to ask, where was God during World War II? Okay, I have to ask that. You don't have to ask it. I do. Um, you know, and so hey, I thought I'd share one of my poems. We don't show off our talent enough, you and I.
I would love to hear a poem.
So I thought I'd share one of my poems. It's from way back. It's called "Waiting for the Messiah," and it's very much about this question for me of what does God owe us? And by the way, I'm not talking about he owes me a stimulus check. Steam completes the room, condenses on the yellow-tinged walls, slithers to the tile floor, wet with sweat and condensation, big bellies pouting out. We talk about sports and politics, about weather and our gods. The snake-hissed steam memories, generations now remote, lost, diasporic ghosts. Grandfathers ladle water on their heads, unmindful or afraid of the shower on the wall. It is holy water they ladle, blessed by all those wasted lives. In Belarus, grandfathers' blood washed dirt streets, while the synagogues in flames and ash proclaim, Messiah, do not dare to pass. So,
very good. I love it.
Thank you. I wrestle with this. And I'm not talking, as I say, I'm not talking about because my such and so relative died in the Holocaust. And by the way, I'm very fortunate, although it was affected me psychologically to be aware of. I did not, to my knowledge, because I didn't know those people. They were there, but I didn't know them. I didn't suffer a lot of loss in the Holocaust. But what I was very aware of is, where was God? How did God comfort? How did God greet? What happens, in the face of that? How does God recreate? How does God recreate that world? Recently on television, there was a series, a mini series. I think it's called Unorthodox or something like that. It's about a young woman who leaves her Hasidic family in Williamsburg, and it's very good series. I highly recommend. It's on Netflix, I believe.
Check it out.
And in it, one of the things that's said is that the purpose why these Hasidic Jews are so insistent on having children, one of them is that they have to replace the 6 million. Well, does God have some responsibility to replace the 6 million? And if so, how without killing another 6 million? There are those who would say, for example, that God has a responsibility to protect Israel because God allowed the Holocaust. Well, protecting Israel, what does that do to the Arabs, to the Palestinians?
Yeah, and a lot of people get upset, Ken, when you say something like that. They call you anti-Semitic, and the truth is, no, you're not anti-Semitic. What you are is a feeling, caring human being about all people.
Yeah, well, I'm more than that. I'm asking a theological question. How does God balance the scale? How does God feel, or does God believe that God is teleologically free of any kind of ethical or moral concern? Does God not care? And if God does not care and does not feel some ethical responsibility, then do we have a responsibility to God? But by the way, this brings up the book of Job. You ever read Job? That's quite a story. What a story. God tests Job in these terrible ways. And at the end,
I know.
at the end, God says, "Oh, Job passed the test. I'm going to restore him. I'm going to give him a wife. I'm going to give him children. I'm going to give him flocks. I'm going to give him all this." And we're all at the end of this supposed to say, "Oh, glory to God! What a wonderful and gracious God that God has done this." Well, I'm sorry. I keep thinking about Job's wife. I keep thinking about Job's kids. Even those sheep and whatever. What about them?
Right.
She didn't. Mrs. Job didn't count. Well, what kind of God is that? So yes,
So
I'm
I
saying
had the same thoughts, Ken. Absolutely, and I don't think. But the problem I have with the religions is I don't think that if you do good, you automatically go to heaven. Or I think each person that's put in on earth or enters the world is there for an agreement they've already made. It has nothing to. God doesn't control you once you're. I think you can reach out when you need help, and you really need to talk to someone. And I've seen things happen where people have been cured of stuff when they have done that when they were in need.
Mhm.
But I don't think that. I think He gave us a brain and a conscience.
Yeah, but sometimes perfectly good people, as in the Holocaust, as in not only the 6 million Jews, but the Romani and the gays and so many people died.
I know.
And
It's horrifying, and we should have all, as a world, learned from it instead of continuing on.
And how
with
does
more and
God,
more and more destruction and war.
And how does God
And people deny it even happening. My God, what is wrong with people?
And how does God restructure the world and take responsibility for a creation that's faulty? You edit your books.
Yeah.
You might even come up with a new edition. You might change a book. I certainly am thinking about rewriting some of my books. And I certainly edited them and, multiple times and had beta readers and all of this process. God went, if you're to believe the biblical story, okay, there's an earth. Why isn't he editing? Why isn't God editing? I do slip into that pronoun. Why isn't God editing his work? Why isn't God coming back and repainting the portrait, the canvas? And
that's what a lot of people are waiting for.
Yeah. And if and when God does that, how is God going to take responsibility for making it a better canvas? That's a question I am challenging God today. I am saying, God, don't you dare pass by this opportunity. Come, if you exist, if you want to be God, if you want humans to revere you, then do you not have a reciprocal responsibility to us as your work of creation? Boy, that's about as much hubris as I'm capable of.
Well, I welcome people's views on religion, and I'm not putting them down, except I want people to stop hurting each other.
Okay. Yeah, folks, I'm moving my camera here a little so you can hopefully see my T-shirt, my faith-filled T-shirt. It says, "Praise the Lord."
Are you a bacon lover?
Am I a bacon lover?
Yeah.
Yes, I'm also a pork chop lover, and a ham lover, and a ham steak lover, and a ribs lover. What I am not, and I own this totally, I am not a vegan. I am not a vegetarian. I do like veggies. I mean, I love fruit.
I love vegetables and fruit, yeah.
But part of the thing is that, I want to say this. I think that sometimes we get so wrapped up in our hubris as humans that we forget that we aren't perfect. We aren't gods. And, we evolved. We came into being. We came into being eating beef and, well, eating meat and, it's somewhat egotistical to say, well, I'm a vegan. I'm not going to, hey.
I think that people should be able to choose how they want to eat, and if they feel good being vegan, great. But
hey, more ribs for me.
I'm more vegan than I was, but folks, I'm not vegan.
Well, whenever somebody tells me that they're a vegetarian, I thank them and say, great. That keeps the price of my steak down. And when they say they're vegan, I say, great, more ribs for me. And the fact of the matter is, and this is one more thing, going back to a theme that you had raised very beginning, because we were running out of time, and one of the great points you raised was about, that everything's connected, not just humans, but humans, animals, plants. Well, one of the things that we have to own is that when we pull a plant to eat it, when we take that side down that rye or that wheat, we are also affecting living beings. And yet plants communicate. Plants seem to have real consciousness at some level. And, it's kind of like the only thing that I have tried to give up eating over the years because of this is I try never to eat octopus anymore, because I don't think that I should eat anything that's smarter than I am. But I say that because I want to point out that yes, there are beings, there are entities out there, and we don't know what they are, that in some ways are more adaptive, more intelligent than we. And hey, it is a tooth and fang world. But I do honestly, I do believe that the octopus is one of the most clearly one of the most brilliant of all the creatures on this earth. By the way, though, I will tell you that I do try to never eat anything that's brighter than I am, that's more intelligent than I am. And on my good days, that pretty much, I'll eat anything but an octopus. I try not to eat an octopus. But on my bad days, I truly have difficulty even gnawing on a turnip.
You're bad.
Well, let's hope that, folks, that you will look for Monica and myself and for All Things That Matter Radio on Facebook, on Twitter. And by the way, you might also go look for us on the Amazon, because we do write and we really appreciate the idea that you might read. So join us, please. Have a wonderful day.
Thanks, folks. Bye-bye.
Bye.